everyone, I hope all of you are doing good, and today I am back with the fourth video of the video series on our environment class 10th science, and in this video we are going to discuss in detail about ozone layer. So all about ozone layer will be clarified in this video. So I am Roshni from Learner Hub, the free learning platform where you get to study everything about math, science, social science, English grammar, tips and tricks and motivational videos absolutely for free at learnerhub.com. So, are we all ready to get started? Let's get started. When I talk of our contribution, the first thing that comes to our mind is the disposal of wastes. So you would have seen that there is so much of waste that comes out of your house, not only your house, even out of your room. Your room itself, you will have so many waste papers, you will have your use and throw pens. So you will have so many things which are waste for you. So you will put them all in the dustbin present in your room. Similarly, there will be so much of waste materials coming out of your kitchen. Right? And similarly, you will have so many dustbin placed inside each room of your house. And finally, from your house will come out a lot of waste. So similarly, these kind of waste comes from everybody's house, and that's how this entire waste gets created. Now, how we dispose of this waste, what kind of waste materials we actually come out with, so they all add to the environmental problems. Right? The kind of materials which we use in our day-to-day life actually decides what kind of waste materials will come out of my house. For example, let us suppose if I am using too many papers, so the waste materials will also consist of papers. If I am using too many plastic bottles, so when those bottles become waste, when they are not good in a good condition to keep things, so we will throw them off, right? So they will become the waste materials. So disposal of waste is a concern, because the kind of waste which we are throwing actually matters a lot. So we will talk about this in detail. Next is ozone layer depletion. So I think this is a new term for you. What is ozone? What is ozone layer? And what after all we mean by ozone layer depletion? So again, we will talk about this topic also in detail, that what is ozone layer and how is it causing problem to the environment, and how are we responsible for the depletion of this ozone layer. Extinction of wildlife. You would have seen that there are so many animals which used to exist before and gradually they became extinct. Let us take the example of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs used to exist once upon a time, but gradually they vanished. Similarly, these days also you will get to hear about certain birds and animals which are on the verge of extinction. So why are they becoming extinct? Now, what harm does it cause to our environment if certain animals become extinct? Now can you answer this question after we have studied the food chain? So in the food chain and in the food web, you saw that all animals in one way or the other depend on some other animals. So now out of that food chain, if you imagine that any one group of animals become extinct. For example, if I talk about maybe goats, if all the goats vanish, do you think that it will not cause any problem to the ecosystem? Will it not cause any problem to the food chain? It will cause, because there are so many animals who are dependent on goats for their food. So those animals will not get their food. Similarly, goats feed on so many things, like goats feed on plants. So when those so many number of goats will suddenly vanish, so the consumers of plants will also decrease. So that means the population of the plant will also increase. So this will cause a disbalance in the ecosystem. So there will be too many plants and there will be no goats for higher animals to feed upon. For example, if I say that the lions used to feed on goats, so if there are no goats in the forest now, so the lions will start starving. There is nobody to eat upon. So the lions will start starving, and suddenly one fine day even the lions will keep dying. So the lions will also become extinct. So if a particular group of animals is becoming extinct, that is also an issue for the environment, because the environment wants everything to be balanced. They want all kind of living organisms to be present in a desirable number. Then unnecessary usage of energy. You would have seen that there are so many people. Maybe let us take your example. You go to your school. Maybe in your neighborhood there are 5 children who go to the same school. But how do they go to their school? Each of them go by their own car. So don't you think you are wasting energy? Yes, you are. Because when you are using your car, you are actually unnecessarily wasting the petrol which is driving your car. From where is that petrol coming? That is nothing but these are the sources of energy. When we learned the lesson on sources of energy in class 9, we have discussed all these things in detail, right? That resources of energy, the sources are limited. Our population is increasing. If we do not make judicious use of energy, a day will come when there will be no source of energy. We will not be able to produce energy at all. Right? So, we should not waste energy unnecessarily. For example, in this case, instead of each child traveling by his or her own car, the 5 of them together can travel by a bus. So there is just one vehicle and all of them can go together and reach their school. So that is a better option. In that case, you are saving a lot of energy. Similarly, excessive use of pesticides. So these pesticides or insecticides, they actually help in killing the pests and insects and thereby improve the crop production and crop yield. But when you start using too much of pesticides, what would happen? These pesticides will get accumulated in the soil or they will get accumulated in the water, so that entire water will get polluted. So the soil will get polluted, and this water or soil can enter into the food chain and they can harm so many animals. Because as I said just now, that the food chain is all related. Right? So these excessive use of pesticides is also harming the environment by causing pollution as well as by harming the living organisms. Industrialization. This is another important factor which is harming the environment. The products coming out of the industries, for example, the gases, will cause a lot of air pollution. The waste materials coming out of the industries also cause a lot of problems to the environment. So with the modernization or with too much of industrialization, it has been found that we have actually added to a lot of environmental problems. Moreover, to set up industries, many a times it is seen that people will cut down forests, they'll cut down the trees and they'll set up industries. So what is happening? First of all, we are cutting down trees. So we are anyways causing an imbalance to the food chain. Because you see, producers are so very important in the food chain. So if there are no producers, nobody will get food, because every living organism is at the end of the day dependent on the producers for their food. So when we are cutting down forests, we are actually ending up the producers. Now when the producers are getting ended up, and on top of that we are setting factories there which is causing air pollution, water pollution and soil pollution. So we are actually harming the environment. So these are some of our actions which actually add up to the environmental problems. Now in this lesson, some of these we have already discussed in our class 9th lessons. For example, the use of pesticides, the usage of energy, all these things we have already studied in class 9. So in this lesson, we will focus only on the first 2 things, that is the disposal of wastes and the ozone layer depletion. So we will concentrate on these 2 issues in this lesson. So let us try to understand what is ozone layer, because before we actually understand how does it harm the environment, we should first know what it is. So what is ozone layer? It is a protective layer around the earth which absorbs the harmful ultraviolet radiation of the sun. I'm sure so many questions arising in your mind. You might be thinking, what is ozone actually? So we'll talk about that in the next slide. The next question that might arise in your mind is, what is ultraviolet radiation? Here I have very nicely written it as UV radiation. What is ultraviolet radiation? Now the sun emits many different types of radiation, like the visible light which enables us to see, the infrared radiation, the ultraviolet radiation. There are many different types of radiation which actually comes out from the sun. Now out of all these radiations, ultraviolet radiation is very high energy. I mean, it has a lot of energy, and that is why, since it has too much of energy, so it is to some extent harmful to the living cells. It can cause harm to the cells of living organisms. Like it can cause skin cancer. Like if a human being's skin is exposed to ultraviolet radiation for a longer time, there is a probability that it can cause skin cancer and finally kill that person. Right? So ultraviolet radiation has harmful effects for the life existing on the earth. Now this ozone layer is nothing but a protective layer. So here in this picture you can see that this is the sun, these are the UV rays, and this is a ozone layer. So it acts like a soldier providing protection to our house. So house is the earth and soldier is the ozone layer. So that is basically ozone layer. So now you understand what we mean by depletion of ozone layer. That means the ozone layer is vanishing up. So presence of ozone layer is needed for our protection, right? So now let us see what actually is ozone. Now ozone basically is a deadly poison. So it is contrary that a poison itself is acting as a protector here. So ozone in itself is a poison, but this layer formed of ozone acts as a protection from the ultraviolet radiation. So for us, ozone layer is a protector, right? So this ozone is formed at higher levels of the atmosphere. Now basically when we talk of ozone, ozone is written as O3. What is O2? O2 is nothing but molecular oxygen, right? So O3 is ozone. So now how is this ozone formed? Now when I write O2, I am talking about molecular form of oxygen. When I write O, what do we mean? We mean one atom of oxygen. So O represents oxygen atom, O2 represents molecular oxygen, and O3 represents ozone. So now the question is, how is ozone formed and how ozone helps in preventing the ultraviolet radiation reaching the earth? So now at the higher levels of the atmosphere, oxygen is present. So oxygen is abundantly found in these higher levels of atmosphere. Now when the ultraviolet rays fall on the atmosphere, it splits this oxygen to form oxygen atoms. So when ultraviolet radiation falls on this oxygen, the molecular oxygen, it splits into the atomic oxygen. And then these atomic oxygen combines with some molecular oxygen to form ozone. So this is how ozone is formed, because at the higher levels of atmosphere there is too much of molecular oxygen available. So whenever ultraviolet radiation forms, this oxygen will break down into the atomic oxygen, and then this atomic oxygen again combines with a molecular oxygen to form ozone. Now what will this ozone do? This ozone will then absorb the ultraviolet radiation. So once this ozone, so what will this ozone do? It will absorb the ultraviolet radiation. Now after absorbing ultraviolet radiation, what will happen? The ozone will break down to form molecular oxygen plus atomic oxygen. That means the reverse process is happening, right? But meanwhile, it is absorbing the ultraviolet radiation, and this ultraviolet radiation is harmful for us. So the ozone layer is basically absorbing the ultraviolet radiation in the process of its own decomposition. So it forms molecular oxygen plus atomic oxygen, right? And then this atomic oxygen again combines with the ozone to form two molecules of oxygen molecule, right? So now what do you see? What is happening? Basically, first part is the formation of ozone, and the second part is the decomposition of ozone, right? Or you can say the disintegration of ozone. First ozone is forming, then again ozone is breaking. So in the first part, ozone is forming from oxygen. In the second part, ozone is splitting to form oxygen. But in this entire process, what good thing ozone is doing, it is absorbing the ultraviolet radiation, and that is how Earth is getting rid of the ultraviolet radiation. So whatever ultraviolet radiation is coming from the sun, ozone is absorbing all of it, so it is not able to reach the surface of the Earth, and that is how we are protected from the harmful effects of this ultraviolet radiation. So now let us try to understand what do we mean by depletion of ozone layer. The word depletion means decrease. So the decrease in the amount of ozone in the atmosphere is termed as depletion of ozone layer. Now let us suppose our house is protected by some soldiers, maybe the security guards. There are some 10 security guards to protect our house. Now if the number of security guards keep decreasing, what is actually happening? The risk of our house is increasing. Now, if the number of security guards decreases from 10 to 5, that means now the security became lesser. Now, our house is more prone to attacks. So, similarly, in this case, if the amount of ozone keeps decreasing, that means there are lesser ozone to absorb the ultraviolet radiation. That means some ultraviolet radiation might escape and it might reach the surface of the Earth. So, the decrease in the amount of ozone is threatening to our atmosphere because ultraviolet radiation is extremely harmful for us. So this decrease in amount of ozone is known as depletion of ozone layer, and that is why depletion of ozone layer is a threat or is an environmental problem. Now what is the cause for this depletion? Why is the amount of ozone decreasing? So basically when we say that the amount of ozone is decreasing, what we are trying to say is that the thickness of the ozone layer is decreasing. Let us suppose if this is the Earth and if this defines the ozone layer. So this thickness of the ozone layer is decreasing. Now this decrease in thickness of ozone layer is also known as ozone hole. It is also termed as ozone hole. That means a hole created in the ozone layer. Now, what is the cause of it? Why is it decreasing? Why is the amount of ozone decreasing? So, one of the most important, a very, very important cause is the use of chlorofluorocarbons. What are these chlorofluorocarbons? These are dichloro compounds, and this chlorofluorocarbon is often abbreviated as CFC. So, where are they used and what are they? These are basically inert, colorless and odorless gas. They are inert, that means they do not react with anything. They are colorless, they do not have a specific color, and they are odorless. So, with these three properties, you can just imagine how difficult would it be to detect the presence of these compounds because they do not react with anything. So, you cannot detect it. If something reacts with something and forms something else, so it becomes very easy for us to detect that if that particular molecule is present there. So they do not react, they do not have a color, they do not have a smell. So it is quite difficult to detect their presence. Now where are these compounds used? They are generally used in refrigerators, in air conditioners. So there, in those industries, these chlorofluorocarbons are generally used. Now these chlorofluorocarbons as such, they are non-toxic. They are not poisonous. So see, what a weird thing. Ozone, which is a poisonous thing, is actually protecting us, and chlorofluorocarbons, which are non-toxic, they are actually harming us. Right? So they are non-toxic. So what is the problem that they are causing? Now what happens is, at the higher levels of atmosphere, under very high energy radiation, these chlorofluorocarbons gets converted into chlorine, and these chlorine are the culprit. Why? Because one chlorine molecule has the capability to destroy around 1 lakh of ozone molecules. Right? So who is the main culprit here for depleting the ozone layer? It is not the chlorofluorocarbons directly, but the chlorine molecules which are produced from chlorofluorocarbons at the higher levels of atmosphere. And that is why we say that usage of these kind of compounds, that is chlorofluorocarbons, should be limited. So now let us see what would happen if the ozone layer keeps on depleting the same way. If the thickness of the ozone layer keeps on decreasing at this rate, what might happen? And what has happened in the past so many years? So here, if you look at this picture, you can see that in the past so many years, gradually the concentration of ozone is decreasing, right? So that is a serious threat for the environment, because when it decreases a little bit, it doesn't cause much harm, but gradually when it keeps on decreasing, a time will come when all of the ultraviolet radiation will be able to reach the surface of the earth, and then we know the consequences, right? So here in this picture you can see it actually shows the different colors actually show the concentration of ozone. So here you can see the more reddish the color is, the more is the concentration. Right? So here you see it depicts the year. So how it has been predicted by NASA that in the coming years, if things keep on going like this, so in the coming years, the ozone layer might get completely vanished as well. So in that case, a day will come when the existence of life would not be possible on Earth, because whatever life forms exist here, they might die off because of the harmful ultraviolet radiation. So, what are the consequences of ozone layer depletion? It can cause many harmful diseases like skin cancer, leukemia, that is blood cancer, or breast cancer. It can also damage the immune system. Now, what is the significance of immune system in our body? They are nothing but the security guards of our body. They actually help to fight infection inside our body. If we have a strong immune system, we tend to fall less ill. Diseases cannot attack us. But if we have a weaker immune system, any small disease might attack us and they might even kill us. So having a strong immune system is very, very important, and this depletion of the ozone layer, that is the ultraviolet radiation, can damage our immune system. It can damage the plants. So overall you can see that it can damage all types of life forms, because if all plants vanish off, no other living organism will be able to exist, because every living organism depend on plants for their food. So now what should we do to control this ozone layer depletion? Because if this is the scenario where the ozone layer can spoil everything existing here, like they can even affect the plants. Now how do they affect the plants? They actually adversely affect the process of photosynthesis. Therefore plants cannot prepare their food, so eventually they will die. They also cause more water to evaporate through the stomata of the leaves. Therefore the content of water inside the plants as well as inside the soil becomes less. So these two things put together can kill a plant. So now when we know that there are so many harmful effects of the ozone layer being depleted, so what should we do to control this depletion? First is limited production of CFCs, that is chlorofluorocarbons. If possible, we should ban the production of chlorofluorocarbons, because they are the ones who produce chlorine in a large amount, and one chlorine can kill so many molecules of ozone, right? Next is minimize the usage of pesticides, because even pesticides prove to be harmful to the existence of ozone layer. Usage of eco-friendly household cleaning products, because there are some products which will be eco-friendly. That means they are degradable. They can be broken down into simpler forms which can again be utilized or recycled in the atmosphere. But many of the cleaning agents which are actually being used in our houses, they contain a lot of harmful and poisonous chemicals which actually interfere with the existence of the ozone layer. So we should make sure that we try to avoid things which actually cause the ozone layer to deplete, because after all, ozone layer acts as a protective layer for us. So that is all about ozone layer. What is ozone layer? How is ozone formed? How ozone layer actually absorbs the harmful ultraviolet radiation? What actually causing the ozone layer to get depleted, and what are the measures that we should take in order to control this depletion. I hope you found this video useful. If you have a feedback or you want to share your experience with us, do let us know in the comment section, and I will see you all very soon with a new video, with a new topic. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.